What if the past isn't as quiet as we think? What if beneath ancient ruins and layers of stone, there are discoveries that don't just rewrite history, but quietly disturb it? Archaeology is often imagined as slow, peaceful work, brushes against dust, bones carefully lifted from the earth. But that image hides something far more unsettling. Because every so often, researchers uncover evidence that simply does not belong where it's found. Footprints in rock millions of years too old. Bodies preserved so perfectly they look asleep. Artifacts so advanced they seem out of place in their own time. These are not legends or myths. They are real discoveries, documented, measured, and debated, that refuse to fit neatly into our understanding of human history. And it's not fear that keeps experts awake at night. It's the quiet realization that the past may be far more complex and far less understood than we are comfortable admitting. Tonight, we step into that silence and listen closely.
There is a strange stillness to the ancient world, an illusion of silence that settles over ruins, deserts, and forgotten burial grounds like dust over old stone. But beneath that quiet surface, beneath the familiar stories we tell ourselves about how humanity began and where it traveled, something else waits. It whispers from the cracks in broken pottery, from the collapsed roofs of temples swallowed by sand, from bones that have lain undisturbed for thousands of years. It is the whisper of unanswered questions, unresolved puzzles, and discoveries so unsettling that even the experts who dedicate their lives to studying them find themselves lying awake at night, staring into the darkness and wondering what they have truly uncovered. Most people imagine archaeology as a peaceful science, a careful brushing of dirt, the gentle lifting of fragile artifacts, the cataloging of objects in neatly labeled drawers. But there's another side to it, one that is rarely spoken aloud. Every archaeologist, historian, or researcher eventually encounters something that refuses to fit neatly into the timeline of human history as we know it. Something that resists explanation. Something that sends a quiet shiver down the spine, not because it is supernatural or monstrous, but because it suggests that the past is far stranger and far less understood than we like to believe. This documentary invites listeners into that shadowed side of discovery. Not the loud, dramatic mysteries that fill pop culture, but the soft, unsettling ones that linger at the edges of scientific certainty. The ones that turn up in dusty storage rooms, in hastily written excavation notes, in isolated labs where a single artifact challenges decades of accepted knowledge. These are the findings that the world rarely hears about in detail, not because they are being hidden, but because they raise questions no one is comfortable answering. As we begin this journey, the tone remains calm, soothing, and reflective, appropriate for listeners drifting towards sleep or settling into a quiet moment of curiosity. But woven into that calmness is a gentle tension, a subtle suggestion that something beneath the earth has been trying to tell us a different story all along. The ancient world was not simple. It was not primitive, and it was not always gentle. It was full of brilliance and darkness, creativity and violence, beauty and terror. The contradictions sit side by side, preserved in stone, bone, and artifact. Our story begins with the simplest of human traces, footprints. Impressions left behind by bare feet or sandals, pressed into mud that turned to stone long before any modern civilization existed. Footprints are intimate. They reveal the presence of a person where no person should logically have been. They remind us that history is not just books and theories. It is the physical record of human beings moving, working, living, and sometimes fleeing across landscapes long gone. Yet some footprints discovered over the years have defied explanation entirely. They appear in geological layers older than the accepted age of human beings. They appear alongside creatures long extinct. They appear in places where science confidently insists no humans, or even human ancestors, could have walked. These anomalies are not easily dismissed. They linger in the minds of experts who have examined them, measured them, tested them. They challenge the foundational timeline upon which our understanding of humanity is built. And they serve as an appropriate beginning to our exploration because they represent a simple but profound contradiction. The softness of a footprint preserved forever in unyielding stone. Something as light as a step, frozen in something as heavy and permanent as time itself. But the strange discoveries that keep experts awake at night are not limited to footprints. Later in this documentary, we will move into preserved bodies. Mummies whose expressions seem too alive, whose internal chemistry seems too unnatural, whose wounds or rituals suggest stories darker than any legend. We will explore artifacts whose craftsmanship rivals modern engineering, even though they emerge from civilizations not known for possessing such knowledge. We will wander through megalithic structures whose construction methods baffle researchers, and through underground tunnels whose purpose may never be understood. We will decipher ancient scripts that refuse to reveal their meaning, examine bones shaped by unknown tools, and interpret rituals that walk the line between devotion and cruelty. Throughout this journey, we will balance two forces, what we know and what we fear we might never know. For every certainty in archaeology, there's an exception. For every explanation, there's an alternative theory waiting in the shadows. And for every expert who sleeps peacefully with accepted facts, there is another who lies awake, turning over a single baffling detail in their mind, unable to reconcile it with the world as it should be. The purpose of this introduction is not to frighten, but to gently open the door to the unknown, because mysteries, when presented softly, invite curiosity rather than fear. The past is not a threat. It is a vast field of possibilities. And every disturbing discovery, every strange artifact, every anomaly carved into the earth is simply another clue in the great puzzle of human existence. Whether these clues point toward forgotten civilizations, misunderstood technologies, or simply the vastness of human ingenuity, they remind us that the story of humanity is still being written, or perhaps still being uncovered. As we leave this introductory space, imagine yourself walking through a quiet museum late at night. The lights are dim. The halls are empty. Glass cases reflect only faint glows. Every object seems to hold a memory, a secret, a fragment of a story waiting to be told. You sense that if you stood still long enough, you might hear faint whispers rising from the depths of time. And now, with the gentle hush of history surrounding you, we begin our first chapter, where the earth itself holds impressions left by beings who were never supposed to be there. There is something deeply human about a footprint. It is the quietest form of presence. No words, no tools, no artifacts, no structures. Just a simple mark left behind by a living being moving through the world. Unlike a towering temple or a piece of crafted metal, a footprint carries no intention to be remembered. It is accidental, momentary, something that should disappear within moments. And perhaps that is why the ancient footprints that defy explanation feel so unsettling. They were never meant to last, and yet they remain, pressed in a stone older than any human story, silently insisting that someone, something, walked there when they should not have existed at all. This section begins with one of the most puzzling categories of archaeological finds. Human-like footprints discovered in geological layers that predate the accepted timeline for human evolution. Some are found in stratum millions of years old, far older than modern Homo sapiens. Others appear beside the tracks of dinosaurs or extinct megafauna, as if two worlds, one long vanished, one impossibly early, briefly touched. These footprints have been studied, scanned, cast, photographed, dismissed, defended, debated, and quietly shelved. And yet, no matter how much scrutiny they undergo, they continue to raise the same uncomfortable question. How can a human step be embedded in rock laid down long before humans existed? The soft, calm tone of this narrative allows listeners to drift into the mystery without alarm. We walk slowly through these discoveries as if moving through a dream, letting each contradiction linger gently in the mind. At first, the scientific response to such finds is predictable. Misidentification, erosion patterns, unusual geological processes that mimic human footprints. And indeed, some of these cases are eventually explained away neatly. But others remain irritatingly resistant to simple answers. The impressions have the arch, the heel, the toe spacing, and even the pressure distribution of a modern human foot. Some show deep, weight-bearing points, suggesting not only form but movement. A few even contain evidence of a child's smaller steps walking alongside a larger adult stride. These details make it harder for researchers to dismiss them as quirks of nature. One of the most unsettling aspects of these footprints is how ordinary they look. They don't depict giants or mythical beings or strange, alien anatomies. They look like the steps you or I might leave walking on a beach. And yet the rock beneath them belongs to an age so distant it stretches the imagination. It is the ordinariness itself that makes them disturbing. Something familiar placed in a profoundly unfamiliar context. Some scientists argue that ancient volcanic ash or mud could preserve impressions for millions of years if quickly buried. Others point out that erosion is remarkably good at creating deceptive shapes. But when multiple tracks form a clear pattern, when the spacing reflects a consistent stride, when the impressions contain tiny anatomical details unlikely to form through chance, skepticism becomes harder to maintain. Archaeologists are cautious, sometimes painfully so. Their careers depend on avoiding sensational claims. And so these footprints often live in a strange limbo, not accepted, not debunked, simply filed away as anomalies, those frustrating outliers that complicate clean narratives about human development. Every field of science has them, but in archaeology they carry a peculiar weight because they tug at the threads of human identity itself. It is in these moments that experts find themselves awake long after midnight, not frightened, but troubled by the stubbornness of evidence. Footprints are not complex objects that can be manufactured or misinterpreted easily. They are simple, biological, deeply human. And so the mind wanders. Could there have been earlier migrations? Could unknown hominins have existed far earlier than science currently believes? Or are we overlooking a major geological process capable of mimicking human steps with eerie precision? Even more unsettling are the footprints found alongside tracks of ancient animals long extinct. Some researchers speculate about the possibility of ancient floods or geological shifts that might mix layers, creating the illusion of simultaneous presence. Others argue that while geology can play tricks, it cannot easily align two unrelated tracks in the same direction, with matching stride patterns, as if both creatures were walking the same path at the same moment. Calmly, our narrative moves through these contrasting ideas, skepticism and fascination, logic and intuition, certainty and the unknown. The tone remains soft, guiding the listener into reflection rather than tension. These footprints are not presented as proof of anything extraordinary, but as gentle reminders that even the most confident theories rely on fragments of evidence pieced together like a puzzle missing half its pieces. For every anomalous footprint, there are dozens of perfectly ordinary ones. Trails left by working families, ancient hunters, travelers crossing deserts, children playing near prehistoric rivers. And these, too, offer their own quiet mysteries. They show us behaviors, emotions, moments frozen in time. A pair of small feet trailing behind larger ones suggests a child following a parent. A sudden shift in direction hints at fear or curiosity. Deeper impressions in the earth imply running, urgency, or heavy burdens. These human traces bring the past to life, reminding us that the people who lived thousands of years ago felt many of the same impulses we feel today. The contrast between the explainable and the unexplained becomes the heart of this section. On one side are footprints that fit comfortably within established timelines. On the other are those rare, unsettling impressions that challenge the very boundaries of human history. Together, they paint a picture of a past that is both familiar and unknowable, grounded and yet somehow out of reach. As we approach the end of this section, we gently invite listeners to imagine standing before one of these ancient tracks. The air is still. The stone is cool beneath the hand. The impression looks ordinary, simple, human. But knowing its age, knowing the era in which it was supposedly made, transforms it into something else entirely. A silent contradiction, pressed into the earth, waiting patiently for someone to notice. And so we transition softly and naturally into the next phase of our journey. If footprints, light, momentary, made in mud, can survive for impossible stretches of time, what are the bodies themselves? What are the ancient remains that not only endured the passing of ages, but did so in such pristine and unsettling condition that experts still struggle to explain their preservation? The footprints lead us forward, from traces of life to the bodies that refuse to surrender to decay. The earth has a way of keeping secrets, of holding onto what we leave behind long after we are gone. Yet some remains seem to resist time itself, refusing to dissolve into dust as all things inevitably should. Across the world, archaeologists have unearthed bodies preserved in conditions that are as mysterious as they are unsettling. From the peat bogs of northern Europe to the dry deserts of South America, from the frozen expanses of Siberia to hidden tombs buried beneath centuries of soil, these ancient individuals remain almost unerringly intact. Their skin, their hair, sometimes even the expressions frozen on their faces, challenge our understanding of mortality and the passage of time. These preserved remains are not merely archaeological curiosities. They are intimate glimpses into lives lived long ago, people who ate, worked, loved, feared, and died. And yet, their preservation often seems unnatural. Bog bodies, for instance, discovered in northern peatlands, have skins so supple it is as if they might awaken at any moment. The acidic waters of the bog, combined with low oxygen and cool temperatures, halt decay, but that does not account for all the anomalies. Some bodies show signs of ritualistic strangulation, of carefully carved incisions, of strange substances smeared upon their skin. The purpose, the context, the intention behind these acts often remains shrouded in mystery. In the Atacama Desert, mummies appear so desiccated and delicate that the mere touch of a researcher can crumble tissue into powder. Yet despite the fragility, the level of preservation is astonishing. Hair, teeth, sometimes even the contents of the stomach are intact. These bodies tell stories not only of death, but of environment, of climate, and of ancient human practices that modern science is only beginning to understand. Chemical analyses have revealed complex embalming techniques, the use of salts and resins, and other methods that seem sophisticated for the eras in which they were employed. And still, there are aspects that defy explanation. Bodies preserved in ways that cannot be fully replicated, even today, with modern technology. Frozen mummies in Siberia and the Alps present a different kind of enigma. Climatic conditions preserved these individuals in near-perfect condition for thousands of years, but the fascination lies in the small details that make them haunting. Their eyes may still appear sunken, yet expressive. Their fingers, toes, even internal organs are often intact. Clothing, tools, and personal effects accompany them, offering subtle clues about their lives, their deaths, and the circumstances of their preservation. And yet, despite the tangible explanations, cold, ice, permafrost, researchers cannot shake the sense of intimacy with these people. The dead seem to have left behind more than their remains. They have left echoes of life, haunting in their clarity. It is not just preservation that fascinates, but also the sometimes unnerving expressions frozen on these ancient faces. The Talon man, found in a Danish bog, retains a calm, almost peaceful expression despite the violent manner of his death. Some desert mummies exhibit contorted features, perhaps reflecting pain, fear, or the final moments of life. These silent expressions challenge the mind to reconcile the ordinary with the extraordinary. Human beings, once living and breathing, now silent and frozen, preserved beyond natural expectation. leaving modern viewers to imagine their last thoughts, their last fears. The contrast between life and death is sharpened by these discoveries. A body is, by definition, the cessation of life. Yet in its preserved state, it maintains a connection to vitality. Skin texture, hair, even the posture of the corpse can speak as though the person might move again. Scientists study them, measure them, and document every detail, yet the quiet human presence in each discovery is impossible to ignore. It is as if time has been bent, allowing a bridge between past and present that few other artifacts can offer. Even more disturbing are the bodies that suggest deliberate human intervention. Ritualistic deaths, sacrificial killings, and carefully arranged burials hint at cultural practices that are only partially understood. Why were these individuals chosen? What beliefs motivated their deaths or their preparation for preservation? In some cases, chemical traces or injuries hint at ceremonies that are lost to history, practices that, while ordinary to those who performed them, feel almost alien to us now. These discoveries force the modern mind to confront the reality that human life has always been entangled with mystery, fear, devotion, and the unknown. As we examine these preserved individuals, the distinction between natural and unnatural preservation becomes a thread of subtle tension. Some bodies owe their condition to environmental happenstance, peat bogs, desert dryness, ice, but others reveal techniques or circumstances that remain inexplicable. The line between careful science and something beyond comprehension blurs, leaving both researchers and listeners in a space of gentle, reflective unease. It is the quiet fascination of knowing that the past holds secrets beyond even our most rigorous studies, and that these bodies, in their stillness, guard stories we may never fully unlock. These discoveries also serve as a reminder of human universality. Across continents and cultures, people faced the inevitability of death and sought ways to honor, fear, or control it. The methods differ, the rituals vary, but the impulse is familiar, a desire to preserve, to connect, to leave a trace. And yet, the anomalies, the ones that defy time, reason, or expectation, remind us that history is not simply a catalog of events. It is a living, breathing tapestry of uncertainty, stitched with details that do not always fit our understanding. As the listener contemplates these preserved remains, there is a moment of quiet reflection. These bodies are more than evidence. They are companions in time, witnesses to lives long vanished, bearing the weight of both knowledge and mystery. They suggest that while we can study the past scientifically, there is a dimension that remains untouchable, the humanity, the individuality, the silent story held in each preserved hand or face. It is a gentle, haunting reminder that the past can be both comforting and deeply unsettling, and that even in its stillness, it resonates with questions that echo into the present. And as we leave the preserved bodies behind, we naturally move toward the objects these people left behind, the crafted tools, mechanisms, and artifacts that suggest knowledge, skill, and intention far beyond what we might expect. If the bodies can resist decay, what about the things they made? The transition feels seamless, from human presence preserved in time to human ingenuity preserved in material, guiding us deeper into the mysteries that continue to keep experts awake at night. Among the most compelling windows into the ancient world are the objects our ancestors left behind. Tools, mechanisms, and artifacts carry with them the weight of human intention, labor, and imagination. They are tangible expressions of thought, skill, and purpose. Yet some discoveries defy the limits of what we believe ancient civilizations could have achieved. These are artifacts of impossible craft, objects that challenge our understanding of technology, artistry, and knowledge, leaving researchers both fascinated and uneasy. Unlike footprints or preserved bodies, which speak quietly through presence or preservation, these artifacts speak through ingenuity, precision, and design that seem, at first glance, almost modern. One of the most famous examples is the Antikythera mechanism, discovered in a shipwreck off the coast of Greece in the early 20th century. At first, it appeared to be a simple collection of corroded bronze gears. But careful analysis revealed a complexity that stunned scientists. An ancient analog computer capable of predicting astronomical positions, eclipses, and even planetary movements, constructed centuries before such mechanisms were thought possible. The Antikythera device is not merely an artifact. It is a testament to a level of knowledge that contradicts conventional timelines of technological development. Its existence suggests that sophisticated understanding was achieved long before history records it, and that much of that knowledge may have been lost to time. Similar puzzles appear in metallurgy. Ancient tools and objects composed of metals that are remarkably resistant to corrosion, alloys that modern science cannot easily replicate, and intricate carvings that require precise skill continue to emerge from archaeological sites around the world. These objects provoke a quiet, contemplative unease. On one hand, they are proofs of human ingenuity. On the other, they challenge assumptions about what our ancestors could accomplish, raising questions that lack definitive answers. Were these techniques widely known in their time, or were they the work of isolated masters whose knowledge vanished with them? How much of human history has been lost simply because it was never recorded in writing? Some artifacts display artistry so refined that even contemporary observers struggle to imagine the tools or methods used to create them. Tiny gold filigree work, crystal lenses polished to optical clarity, or precisely machined stone spheres found in South America all defy the expectations of their time periods. These objects are not merely utilitarian. They're deliberate, precise, and often enigmatic. Their purpose is sometimes unclear, leaving the imagination to wander. Were they ceremonial, practical, or symbolic? Did they embody knowledge lost to modern science? Each unanswered question deepens the sense of mystery, gently pulling the listener into contemplation. Contrast is central to the allure of these artifacts. On one hand, they are concrete, solid, and measurable. We can weigh them, photograph them, analyze their chemical composition. On the other hand, they hint at knowledge and intent that seems beyond the grasp of the civilizations that produced them, creating a tension between the tangible and the intangible. It is this tension that keeps historians, archaeologists, and engineers awake late into the night, turning over the same questions. What did these objects truly mean to their makers, and how did they achieve such mastery with the tools and knowledge of their era? Even seemingly ordinary items can carry profound implications. Decorative pottery, for example, sometimes contains geometric patterns or astronomical alignments that suggest a sophistication beyond aesthetic preference. Tools shaped for specific purposes, objects designed to interact with celestial events, or ornaments that encode symbolic systems. These are more than artifacts. They are puzzles embedded in history, silent challenges to anyone attempting to reconstruct the past. Each object demands attention, study, and reflection, yet none offers complete answers. The unsettling beauty of these discoveries is heightened by their rarity and fragility. Unlike modern mass-produced objects, each artifact emerges from centuries or millennia of survival by chance. Environmental conditions, human intervention, and sheer fortune determine what reaches our hands. The artifacts that remain are fragments of broader cultures and technologies, tantalizing glimpses into worlds otherwise lost. Their incompleteness adds another layer to the mystery. How many other remarkable objects existed but were destroyed, buried, or overlooked? The imagination fills in the gaps, and in doing so, intensifies the quiet, lingering sense of wonder. Artifacts of impossible craft also reveal the duality of human knowledge. They speak of skill and creativity, of understanding that sometimes surpasses what is documented in written records. Yet they also speak of fragility, loss, and the impermanence of human achievement. The more sophisticated an object, the more poignant its survival becomes, a testament to human capability, but also a reminder of the countless ideas, techniques, and knowledge that have disappeared. This interplay between brilliance and absence, between creation and oblivion, keeps the mind engaged in soft, meditative inquiry rather than fear. As we move through these discoveries, it becomes evident that artifacts are not simply evidence of what humans once made. They are mirrors reflecting what humans were capable of thinking, understanding, and envisioning. They offer a direct line to creativity and cognition, transcending time to provoke quiet astonishment. And yet, for all their elegance, some remain inexplicable, too precise, too advanced, or too enigmatic to fit comfortably within established historical narratives. They invite speculation about lost civilizations, forgotten knowledge, or the ebb and flow of human achievement across centuries. From small tools to massive devices, each artifact challenges the boundary between possibility and mystery. They prepare the mind for what comes next. Entire constructions that defy logic, engineering feats that seem impossible, and structures so grand that they force us to reconsider what ancient hands could accomplish. If a single object can upend our understanding of history, what must an entire city, temple, or monument suggest? The journey moves naturally from the ingenuity captured in artifacts to the enduring enigma of ancient architecture, where scale, precision, and purpose combine to create discoveries that continue to disturb and inspire. And so, leaving behind the crafted objects, we turn to stone, earth, and architecture, the monumental expressions of human ambition that, like the artifacts, demand both admiration and reflection. Here, the mystery expands from the individual to the collective, from human skill to human civilization, setting the stage for discoveries that are as massive as they are perplexing. The silent grandeur of ancient architecture has a way of humbling the modern observer. Across deserts, mountains, and river valleys, structures rise that are at once awe-inspiring and disquieting. They are monuments to human ambition, skill, and imagination. Yet they often seem to defy the limits of the civilizations that created them. Massive stones stacked with precision, underground tunnels that stretch for miles, and perfectly aligned temples oriented to celestial events all suggest an understanding of engineering, astronomy, and construction that should not have existed at the time. These structures, like echoes of a forgotten genius, persist across millennia, leaving behind questions as enduring as the stone itself. Consider the megaliths scattered across the British Isles, the Mediterranean, and South America. Many are composed of stones weighing dozens, sometimes hundreds, of tons, transported and positioned with a precision that challenges modern engineering assumptions. How did people without cranes, pulleys, or modern measurement tools achieve such alignment and placement? Experimental archaeology has attempted to replicate these feats, and while some progress has been made, the process often reveals just how meticulous and labor-intensive it must have been. The result is more than just technical skill. It is an expression of society capable of extraordinary coordination, planning, and determination. Then there are subterranean structures, labyrinthine in nature, carved into solid rock or carefully stacked underground. Found in places like Turkey's Cappadocia region, these complexes contain tunnels, rooms, ventilation shafts, and sometimes entire underground cities. Their purpose is still debated. Refuges from invaders, places of worship, or even sites of esoteric experimentation. What is undeniable is the sheer ingenuity required to conceive, plan, and execute these structures without modern tools or technology. The darkness of these underground spaces, the way light barely penetrates, adds an eerie dimension, as though the very walls themselves are witnesses to secrets long buried. Orientation and alignment also contribute to the mystery. Temples, pyramids, and stone circles across the globe often correspond to astronomical phenomena, sunrises on solstices, lunar cycles, or specific constellations. The precision required to achieve this alignment with primitive surveying tools is staggering. Modern surveys have revealed that some of these sites maintain accuracy within fractions of a degree. Such precision forces us to reconsider not only technical ability, but also the level of astronomical knowledge possessed by these ancient peoples. Were they merely observers of the sky, or did they possess a conceptual understanding that rivaled our own? The contrast between these massive, enduring structures and the ephemeral nature of human life heightens their intrigue. Stone, once shaped and positioned, outlasts generations, civilizations, and even the rise and fall of empires. While the people who built them vanished, the structures themselves endure, silent yet eloquent testaments to skill and vision. Yet their very permanence is unsettling. How much of the knowledge that allowed their construction has been lost? How many civilizations possessed abilities we will never recover? These questions linger like a faint echo, inviting reflection rather than fear. In some cases, architecture reveals purposes that remain enigmatic. Step pyramids, ceremonial platforms, and monolithic tombs often contain features that hint at ritualistic, astronomical, or even symbolic significance. But the details frequently defy interpretation. A perfectly aligned corridor, a chamber with unusual acoustics, or a hidden passage carved at an impossible angle suggests that the builders understood principles that escape modern comprehension. The intersection of function, precision, and artistic expression creates structures that are not only physically imposing, but also conceptually disorienting. They are puzzles built in stone. The mystery intensifies when we consider the engineering feats involved. Massive stones quarried from distant locations, lifted and positioned without the aid of modern machinery, defy straightforward explanation. The precision with which these stones fit together, sometimes without mortar, is remarkable. In some locations, the joints are so tight that not even a knife blade can pass between them. The durability of these constructions has allowed them to survive earthquakes, erosion, and centuries of neglect. And yet, the methods used to achieve this perfection remain largely speculative, leaving room for both wonder and gentle unease. These structures also invite reflection on societal organization. To create a monument of this scale requires not only skill, but also coordination, resource management, and a shared vision. Who orchestrated these projects? How were laborers organized and motivated? Were these achievements the result of a society under a single ruler, or of communities working collectively with shared knowledge and purpose? The architectural remains hint at a complexity in social, political, and technological organization that rivals, and in some cases surpasses, modern assumptions about ancient societies. The duality of clarity and mystery is central to their impact. We can measure, map, and document these structures with precision, yet the why often remains just out of reach. We understand the mechanics, but struggle to grasp the meaning. In this way, architecture becomes a bridge between the tangible and the intangible, between the calculable and the enigmatic. It encourages quiet contemplation, admiration for what was built, and curiosity about what motivated it. Finally, architecture connects us with the people who built it in a deeply human way. Unlike artifacts or footprints, which capture moments, stone and earth endure as collective expressions of belief, ambition, and identity. They are monuments to thought, to labor, and to aspiration. And yet, for all their permanence, they whisper of loss, of knowledge, of understanding, and of human lives that remain partially hidden behind walls, columns, and subterranean passages. As this exploration of impossible constructions comes to a close, we begin to shift from structures themselves to the more intimate traces of human thought, the written, symbolic, and undeciphered messages left behind by ancient peoples. If architecture impresses through scale, these messages intrigue through subtlety. They are hints of minds and intentions, encoded in languages or symbols we may never fully comprehend, waiting quietly to be read and interpreted. And so, we move from the enduring stone of monuments to the fragile marks of human intellect preserved across time. If ancient architecture speaks through stone and earth, then writing speaks through the mind itself. Across continents and millennia, Humans have left traces of thought carved into clay tablets, painted on cave walls, etched in stone, and inked on a fragile papyrus. Some of these messages are mundane: inventories of grain, records of trade, or simple commemorations of rulers. But others are deeply enigmatic, filled with symbolism, coded language, or unfamiliar scripts that resist interpretation. These messages from minds long gone invite the listener to peer into the consciousness of people who lived thousands of years before us, revealing both the brilliance and the mystery of human thought. Undeciphered scripts remain among the most haunting of these discoveries. The Indus Valley script, found on seals and tablets in what is now Pakistan and northwest India, dates back over 4,000 years. Despite decades of study, no definitive translation exists. Some researchers suggest it represents a form of proto-writing used for trade or administration, while others propose it encodes religious or philosophical concepts that are entirely lost to us. The absence of a Rosetta Stone, or equivalent key, leaves these symbols suspended in time, their meaning tantalizingly close, yet frustratingly unreachable. Listening to their silent lines, we are reminded of how much knowledge may have disappeared simply because the key to understanding was lost. Cave paintings and pictographs serve a similar purpose, though in a more visual form. Across the world, from the Lascaux caves in France to the remote shelters of Australia, images of animals, human figures, and abstract patterns suggest storytelling, ritual, or even communication with forces beyond the material world. Some images are immediately recognizable. Others depict forms that seem fantastical or otherworldly. These murals hint at belief systems, cultural values, and experiences that are otherwise absent from historical records. They convey ideas without words, leaving the modern mind to wonder at their full significance. What prompted the artists to carve or paint these images so carefully? Were they meant to instruct, to warn, or to preserve memory? Some inscriptions hint at events or knowledge that cannot be confirmed. Historical records occasionally describe catastrophes, astronomical phenomena, or encounters with peoples or creatures unknown in conventional histories. The challenge is distinguishing literal events from allegory, exaggeration, or ritualistic storytelling. Even so, the very presence of these writings demonstrates a desire to record, to communicate, to assert meaning in a universe that can be chaotic and indifferent. They are echoes of consciousness, reminders that even thousands of years ago, humans felt the same impulse to leave behind a trace of thought, feeling, and understanding. Religious and ritual texts add another layer of complexity. Ancient civilizations frequently inscribed prayers, spells, or invocations in hidden locations, inside tombs, along temple walls, or within sacred objects. Some of these texts are understandable, while others employ symbols or coded language that may have been intelligible only to initiates or priests. The deliberate obscurity adds a subtle tension. It reminds us that not all knowledge was meant to survive, and not all messages were intended for every observer. The ancient world was full of secrets carefully curated, recorded, and hidden, suggesting layers of meaning that modern researchers may never fully grasp. Even when translation is possible, context remains elusive. Words and phrases might survive, but the social, religious, or philosophical framework that gave them meaning is often gone. A single line of text may hint at a cultural practice, a philosophical idea, or a technological concept. Yet without the broader understanding, it can feel opaque or even disturbing. The fragments we recover provide glimpses of intellects engaged in complex thought, yet they also reveal the vast distance separating us from the full comprehension of those civilizations. Listening to these fragments, one senses both connection and profound separation. Humanity mirrored across time, yet obscured by centuries of silence. Contrast shapes the fascination of these messages. On one side, the physical inscriptions are tangible, etched, painted, carved, or molded by human hands. On the other side, the meaning often remains elusive, suspended between what can be read and what cannot. The tangible and intangible coexist, creating an enduring tension that mirrors other mysteries of the ancient world. Unlike artifacts, which communicate through design or utility, writing communicates through intellect and intention, demanding engagement with human consciousness itself. This makes it profoundly intimate and, at the same time, disquietingly opaque. The undeciphered and mysterious texts also provoke reflection on the limits of modern knowledge. They suggest entire bodies of thought, religious practices, or scientific understanding that may have been lost. Could these civilizations have possessed insights into mathematics, astronomy, or natural phenomena that we can no longer recover? Were some forms of writing deliberately designed to be enigmatic, encoded for secret knowledge, or intended to survive only in fragments? Every unanswered question invites curiosity, offering a quiet, contemplative tension appropriate for nighttime listening. As we contemplate these ancient writings, it is impossible not to consider the people behind them. Each inscription represents a mind, a consciousness, a deliberate act of communication. The author may have been a priest, a scribe, an artist, or an ordinary person seeking to record an event or idea. We hear their voice faintly through time, even if we cannot fully interpret the words. This human connection, ephemeral yet undeniable, is what makes these discoveries both comforting and haunting. We are reminded that across millennia, people sought to understand their world, to impose order on chaos, and to leave something of themselves behind. The transition from written messages to other forms of ancient human expression is natural. If inscriptions and paintings reveal thought and belief, the next step is to explore the physical imprint of those beliefs on the human body itself. Skeletal remains, modified bones, and signs of ancient medical or ritual practices offer another dimension to our understanding. The messages we carry internally, etched upon flesh and bone, rather than on clay or stone. These discoveries blur the line between intellect, culture, and biology, leading us from the abstract world of symbols into the intimate, corporeal realm of human existence. And so, as we leave the realm of inscriptions and pictographs, we prepare to listen to the bodies themselves, to hear the subtle, silent stories they convey about ancient lives, deaths, and practices that continue to challenge our understanding and stir curiosity deep into the night. Bones, unlike footprints or artifacts, carry with them a quiet, enduring language of their own. They are the framework of life, rigid and enduring, yet shaped subtly by the passage of time, behavior, and circumstance. Across the world, archaeologists have uncovered skeletal remains that reveal far more than age, gender, or stature. Some speak of disease, diet, and trauma. Others hint at practices, rituals, or knowledge that defy modern understanding. In this section, we listen closely to these silent narrators, bodies that endure, even when the stories surrounding them are partially lost, enigmatic, or disturbing. Skeletal anomalies are often the first clues that something is amiss in our conventional understanding of history. Elongated skulls, deliberately modified by binding or shaping during infancy, appear in many cultures across continents. The practice of cranial deformation raises questions that extend beyond aesthetics. What did these shapes signify? Were they markers of status, rites of passage, or expressions of identity? Even today, modern observers cannot replicate the subtle symmetry and precision achieved by ancient peoples, highlighting both human ingenuity and the persistence of cultural intent across time. Other bones bear evidence of medical or surgical knowledge that seems remarkably advanced. Trepanation, the deliberate removal of portions of the skull, has been observed in remains from Europe, Africa, and the Americas, often with surprisingly high survival rates. The tools used were rudimentary by modern standards, yet the success of these procedures suggests a deep understanding of anatomy, patient care, and healing. Some cases even show evidence of antiseptic or herbal treatments applied to surgical wounds, demonstrating a sophistication that challenges assumptions about early medicine. In these silent testimonies, human intelligence and observation are etched into flesh and bone. But it is not only evidence of skill that makes these remains unsettling. Some skeletons suggest behaviors, injuries, or modifications that remain difficult to explain. Certain bones display signs of extreme wear, repeated deliberate alterations, or unnatural positioning within graves. Mass graves, often associated with ritual or conflict, present complex patterns of injury and deposition, hinting at social or religious practices that modern observers can only partially reconstruct. Each anomaly invites questions about the culture that produced it, the beliefs that guided actions, and the choices surrounding life and death. Even ordinary bones sometimes speak in unexpected ways. Growth patterns, subtle microfractures, and chemical traces reveal diets, migrations, and exposure to environmental toxins. In some cases, isotopic analysis has identified individuals far from their place of birth, suggesting ancient travel or trade networks previously unimagined. These discoveries, while quieter than spectacular anomalies, create a mosaic of human life, offering insight into daily existence, mobility, and interaction in ancient societies. The contrast between fragility and durability is central to the fascination with skeletal remains. Bones are resilient, capable of surviving centuries or millennia, yet they are also delicate, easily damaged by improper excavation or exposure. This duality mirrors the tension inherent in the study of ancient peoples, a desire to preserve and understand, tempered by the realization that every discovery is a partial story, susceptible to misinterpretation or loss. It is this interplay of permanence and vulnerability that makes bones both scientifically valuable and poetically haunting. Some skeletal findings blur the line between natural variation and intentional modification, creating subtle mysteries that linger in the minds of researchers. Teeth filed into unnatural shapes, healed fractures that suggest non-random trauma, or skeletal anomalies that hint at unknown genetic variations all provoke contemplation. Were these modifications cultural, medical, or symbolic? Did certain communities possess knowledge of anatomy or genetics lost to us? The uncertainty lingers, a gentle hum of curiosity beneath the surface of measured study. Mass graves and ritualistic burials reveal yet another dimension of human behavior. Carefully arranged skeletons, sometimes oriented according to celestial alignments or cultural norms, suggest a deliberate relationship between death, ritual, and belief. Objects buried alongside the dead, tools, ornaments, food, further contextualize these practices, offering subtle hints about values, social hierarchy, and cosmology. Yet in many cases, the full significance remains tantalizingly out of reach, leaving the modern observer to balance interpretation with humility. Bones also carry the legacy of trauma and conflict. Healed fractures, weapon-inflicted injuries, and signs of malnutrition document the harsh realities of ancient life. These silent records serve as reminders that human history is not solely a narrative of achievement, but also of struggle, adaptation, and resilience. Listening to them requires a gentle attentiveness, an acknowledgement of suffering, and a recognition that the past is both extraordinary and profoundly human. The intimacy of skeletal evidence is perhaps its most compelling aspect. Unlike artifacts, which may reflect skill or purpose, or architecture, which expresses collective ambition, bones tell the story of individual lives. Each ridge, curve, and wear pattern is unique, a fingerprint of existence that bridges time. They are the most personal artifacts we possess, yet they are silent witnesses, demanding careful observation and interpretation. The connection is subtle. The knowledge that these were real people, living and breathing, whose choices, movements, and experiences are now embedded in the very framework of their being. As we leave the realm of the bones, the narrative naturally shifts toward ritualistic practices, the ways in which ancient peoples sought to manipulate, honor, or control life and death. If skeletal remains speak of the human condition, Then ritual sites, ceremonial objects, and sacrificial practices reveal the intentions, fears, and beliefs that shaped those lives. They provide a bridge from the tangible remains of the body to the intangible world of human thought and culture, guiding us deeper into the mysteries that continue to disturb and fascinate experts even today. The boundary between life and death has always been one of humanity's most profound preoccupations. Across cultures and epochs, people have developed elaborate rituals to honor the dead, to ensure their peaceful passage to the afterlife, or even to influence the forces of nature. These rituals are expressions of both belief and fear, woven into the fabric of human existence. They are performed with reverence, devotion, and sometimes with urgency. Yet, in many cases, these rites carry a layer of mystery that modern observers can only begin to understand. Some rituals seem designed to manipulate the forces of life and death themselves, while others reflect beliefs that were so profoundly different from our own that they challenge the very notion of what it means to be human. Consider the burial practices that have been discovered across the globe, each offering a glimpse into the complex relationships ancient societies had with death. In Egypt, elaborate tombs and burial chambers were constructed to safeguard the deceased's journey to the afterlife. The Great Pyramid of Giza, with its precise alignment and vast scale, is perhaps the most famous example of a tomb built with the most profound care for the deceased's eternal rest. Yet it is not merely the grandeur of these tombs that captivates. It is the detailed, ritualistic practices that accompanied burial. Intricately prepared bodies, carefully positioned in alignment with celestial bodies, and a wealth of grave goods, from food to jewelry to sacred texts, suggest a belief that death was not an end, but a transition into another plane of existence. But even with modern technology, the precise meaning of many of these objects remains speculative. Why were certain items included, and what did they signify in the grand cosmological scheme of the ancient Egyptians? The very idea of preparing someone for the afterlife suggests a profound understanding of the impermanence of life and the possibilities beyond it. Similarly, in the ancient cultures of South America, the mummification of the dead was not simply an act of preservation, but a ritualistic practice imbued with spiritual significance. The Inca, for instance, practiced the mummification of their rulers and elites, preserving them with exquisite care, often placing them in seated positions as if still alive. These mummies were treated as living beings, their spirits consulted in matters of governance, military decisions, and even agricultural practices. Some mummies were even transported long distances to be included in religious ceremonies or festivals. These preserved bodies, with their unnerving stillness, symbolize a deep bond between the living and the dead. However, what is truly unsettling is the apparent permanence of this relationship. The dead were not fully gone, but maintained a presence that reached into the everyday lives of the living. Massive ceremonial sites like Teotihuacan in Mexico further illuminate the role of ritual in these ancient societies. The Pyramid of the Sun, the Pyramid of the Moon, and the Avenue of the Dead were all part of a sacred complex that appears to have been designed to align with the celestial bodies and the cycles of the earth. The exact nature of the rituals conducted here remains unclear, but it is known that the practice of human sacrifice played a central role in many Mesoamerican cultures. The motivations behind these sacrifices are as varied as the cultures that practice them. Some believe that sacrifices were made to appease the gods, to ensure the continuation of the sun's movement, or to guarantee bountiful harvests. The unsettling nature of these practices, sometimes carried out on a massive scale, speaks to an almost desperate attempt to control or influence the forces of nature, life, and death. What is more disconcerting is the fact that these acts were not seen as barbaric, but as sacred and performed with a deep reverence for the gods. In the northern latitudes, burial mounds and sacred sites constructed by the Vikings provide yet another example of rites that blurred the line between life and death. The burial of high-ranking individuals, sometimes alongside their possessions, horses, and even slaves, points to a belief in an afterlife where such things would be needed. The famous Viking ship burials, such as the one found in Oseberg, Norway, demonstrate an understanding of death that intertwined it with social status and power. These burials were seen as a way to ensure that the individual would carry their position and power into the afterlife. However, the fact that some graves contained human sacrifices, often involving the burial of living individuals with the deceased, evokes a sense of unease. These rites were not acts of pity or compassion, but ceremonies imbued with the hope that the deceased would be properly equipped for the journey ahead. The starkness of these rituals forces us to confront the idea that death was not viewed as the cessation of life, but as a continuation of another, equally significant journey. The ancient Celts, too, had their own unique death rituals. In the British Isles, the remains of ancient burial sites, often containing human and animal sacrifices, suggest an intricate understanding of the soul and its transition after death. Celtic burial rites often involve the use of wooden coffins, stone cists, or even the placement of the deceased's body in trees. Some burials show evidence of complex rituals, such as the inclusion of symbolic items like mirrors, shields, or weapons, believed to protect the soul or guide it to the next world. But it is the ceremonial aspect of these rites that is most mysterious. Many of these practices appear to have been conducted with a deliberate focus on the spiritual world, pointing to a belief that death was a crossing, a threshold between worlds that demanded rituals of profound significance. The juxtaposition of rituals surrounding death from all over the world leads us into a deep meditation on how different societies sought to manipulate, influence, and honor the boundary between life and death. The common thread through all of these rituals is the belief that death was not an end, but rather a transformation, a passage to a different realm that required preparation, sacrifice, and respect. Yet, it is the eerie consistency of certain practices, human sacrifice, the entombment of treasures, and the ritual preservation of bodies, that leaves the greatest mark on the observer. The lengths to which these cultures went to ensure that death was properly navigated reveal not only a profound respect for the deceased, but also a powerful fear of the unknown. As we step back from these rituals, we find ourselves contemplating the core mystery they present. How did these ancient peoples come to believe that death was not the end of the journey, but a continuation into something else? How did their worldviews and rituals shape their understanding of life, death, and the cosmos? The rituals themselves, as unsettling as they may seem, offer us a glimpse into a way of thinking that connected the living and the dead in a way that transcended time, offering continuity between both realms. From here, we transition to the strange and sometimes unsettling physical remains that these rituals left behind, artifacts, sacrifices, and monuments, many of which speak silently about the beliefs, fears, and practices that once defined entire cultures. These remnants allow us to delve deeper into the mysteries that continue to haunt our understanding of the ancient world. Throughout human history, there have been moments when entire civilizations seem to have crossed a threshold between reverence for life and a profound submission to the unknown forces they sought to control. At the heart of many of these cultures are rituals that transcend the realm of everyday human experience, acts of profound sacrifice that continue to evoke both fascination and discomfort. These sacrifices, often involving human lives, were not just brutal acts of violence. They were seen as vital, sacred ceremonies, believed to maintain balance, favor the gods, or ensure survival in an unpredictable world. What is unsettling is not only the frequency with which such sacrifices were performed, but also the deep spiritual or cultural meaning attributed to them. The ancient practice of human sacrifice has been documented in various cultures across the globe, each with its own reasons, methods, and symbolism. In Mesoamerica, for instance, the Aztecs believed that the gods had sacrificed their own blood to create humanity. Therefore, in return, humans were expected to offer their blood, and sometimes their lives, to maintain the balance of the cosmos and ensure the continued rise of the sun. Sacrifices were performed at an astounding scale, with temples like the Templo Mayor in Tenochtitlan becoming the focal points of these rituals. Victims, often prisoners of war or volunteers from the lower classes, were led up the great stone steps and laid on altars where priests, using obsidian knives, would cut open their chests and remove their still-beating hearts. The blood would then be offered to the gods, and the body cast down the steps, often to be publicly displayed as a symbol of the people's devotion. This act, brutal by modern standards, was seen as necessary for the survival of the world, a terrifying but revered practice. The scale and regularity of these sacrifices were so ingrained in Aztec society that they were believed to be the very force keeping the sun in motion, ensuring agricultural fertility and maintaining cosmic order. In ancient China, the practice of human sacrifice was similarly tied to the afterlife. Royal tombs and elite burial sites often contained the remains of servants, concubines, or prisoners who were sacrificed to accompany the deceased ruler into the afterlife. The famous tomb of the first emperor of China, Qin Shi Huang, contains not only an army of terracotta soldiers, but also numerous sacrifices buried with the emperor to ensure his protection in the next life. These sacrifices were often performed in the belief that the deceased ruler would continue to reign over their domain even after death. In some cases, entire groups of people were buried alive, sealed within the tomb as a final act of servitude. The unsettling nature of these sacrifices is compounded by the idea that they were seen not as acts of cruelty, but as necessary rites of passage for both the ruler and the sacrificial victims. Similarly, in ancient Egypt, while the practice of human sacrifice was less widespread, it was not unheard of. The pharaohs, considered gods on earth, believed that their power extended even into the afterlife. This belief often led to the sacrifice of servants and attendants who were buried with the pharaohs to serve them in the next world. The most famous example of this practice comes from the tomb of King Tutankhamun, where the bodies of his servants were discovered, though their exact purpose remains a subject of speculation. The idea that death did not mark the end of an individual's existence, but rather a continuation into another world, was central to many ancient Egyptian practices. In this context, the sacrificial offerings to accompany the dead were seen as essential to ensuring the smooth transition from one realm to another. The practice itself, though unsettling, was woven deeply into the spiritual fabric of the time, creating an atmosphere of acceptance and reverence around the idea of death. On the other side of the globe, in the distant Andes, the Incas practiced their own form of sacrifice, which involved not only ritual offerings, but also the killing of young children in ceremonies intended to appease the gods and ensure prosperity. These child sacrifices were often carried out on mountaintops, considered sacred in Inca cosmology. Archaeologists have uncovered mummified remains of these children, some of whom were bound and placed in a position of reverence, their faces frozen in expressions of fear or trance. These sacrifices were tied to the Inca belief in the mountain gods, and it was believed that by offering these innocent lives, the gods would provide the people with good harvests, protection from natural disasters, and victory in battle. The chilling nature of these rites, particularly the inclusion of children, speaks to a worldview in which no action was too extreme to guarantee the favor of the gods. In Europe, particularly during the Iron Age, the Celts also practiced human sacrifice as part of their religious and social structure. The most famous evidence comes from the bog bodies found in northern Europe, particularly in Ireland and Denmark. These bodies, preserved in peat bogs, often show signs of ritualistic killing. The Celts believed in a cosmic balance and frequently sacrificed both humans and animals to appease their gods. The practice of hanging was particularly significant, with people believed to be hanged in sacred groves or trees as an offering to the gods, symbolizing the crossing from life to death. Other archaeological evidence suggests that these sacrifices were performed to ensure fertility, prosperity, or victory in battle, each act serving as a plea for the gods' favor. While these rituals are difficult for modern sensibilities to understand, it is important to note that they were often intertwined with a sense of duty, belief, and even love for the gods or rulers being honored. Sacrifices were not seen as murders, but as sacred offerings, often voluntary, and conducted with the belief that they were necessary to maintain cosmic or social harmony. Yet, the fact that they have survived in such detail across so many cultures and time periods speaks to the deep and unsettling human instinct to confront and manipulate death as a force far greater than life itself. What makes these sacrifices particularly chilling is the understanding that they were not performed in secret, but as public events. They were seen not just as acts of devotion, but as demonstrations of power, control, and the very essence of life itself. In many ways, they were performances, rituals that played out before crowds, reinforcing social hierarchies and cementing the power of those in authority. This was not mere violence, but part of an intricate system of belief in which the boundaries between life and death were not so clearly defined, and the gods themselves seemed to demand constant appeasement. The sacrifices themselves, while deeply embedded in the spiritual and cultural practices of these societies, continue to haunt us because they remind us of how far people were willing to go in their attempts to understand, control, or transcend death. Each act of sacrifice, whether it involved a single victim or thousands, was done with the belief that it was necessary for the continuation of life, the well-being of a society, or the favor of divine powers. These rituals challenge us to consider the nature of devotion, the human relationship with the divine, and the extent to which individuals and societies were willing to submit to forces they could neither see nor fully understand. Beneath the surface of our world, hidden deep within caves, tunnels, and subterranean chambers, lies a vast network of mysteries that remain largely unexplored. The Earth itself holds within its depths not only the fossils of extinct species and the remnants of ancient civilizations, but also the secrets of practices and structures that seem designed to be concealed from the eyes of the living. These underground realms have served as places of worship, refuge, and even experimentation throughout history. While the surface of the Earth may be visible and understood, the deeper recesses of the world often remain a mystery, as if the Earth itself has guarded its most enigmatic aspects. One of the most enduring mysteries is the labyrinthine system of tunnels and chambers found in places like the catacombs of Paris and the underground cities of Turkey's Cappadocia region. These underground complexes, some of which stretch for miles beneath the Earth, were once bustling with life, but now lie mostly forgotten, their true purposes obscured by time. The catacombs of Paris, for instance, were not originally designed as burial sites, but became so after the city's cemeteries became overcrowded in the late 18th century. Over 6 million Parisians are said to have been laid to rest in these eerie tunnels, but the existence of these underground spaces long predates their use as final resting places. Some archaeologists speculate that these catacombs serve as places of refuge during times of persecution or war, while others suggest that they were once used for secret rituals, their true purpose known only to a select few. In Turkey, the underground cities of Derinkuyu and Kaymakli, which extend several stories below ground, offer a more intricate and puzzling story. These subterranean complexes were carved into volcanic rock by ancient peoples, and their scale is staggering. Some of these cities could house thousands of people, with passageways, rooms, ventilation shafts, wells, and storage areas all carefully designed to make survival possible in total darkness. These cities were likely constructed as refuges, designed to shield inhabitants from invasions, but their depth, size, and sophistication raise the question of just how advanced the civilization was that built them. The fact that such monumental structures could be created entirely underground, using nothing more than primitive tools, forces us to reconsider the capabilities of ancient peoples. It is as if these underground cities were designed not only to shelter the body, but also to conceal knowledge, rituals, or artifacts that were meant to be hidden away from the world. Similar subterranean spaces exist in ancient cultures across the globe, from the ruins beneath the pyramids of Egypt to the cryptic complexes of the ancient Chinese. In Egypt, beneath the shadow of the Great Pyramid, a series of tunnels and chambers have been discovered, some of which remain closed off, their contents undiscovered. Archaeologists have long speculated that these hidden chambers might contain the final resting places of kings and queens, or perhaps treasures meant to accompany them into the afterlife. But no definitive exploration has been able to confirm what lies hidden within these dark recesses. The idea that a place of such magnitude could have secret chambers concealed beneath it challenges our assumptions about ancient Egyptian burial practices. Was the pyramid's construction merely the beginning of an even more enigmatic, unfinished structure, waiting to be discovered? In ancient China, the burial practices of the emperors reveal another facet of subterranean mystery. The tomb of the first emperor, Qin Shi Huang, is one of the most famous and mysterious archaeological sites in the world. Buried with the emperor is an army of life-size terracotta soldiers, meant to protect him in the afterlife. However, beneath the tomb, an even deeper mystery lies in the form of a vast, underground complex that is yet to be fully explored. It is said that the tomb itself is surrounded by rivers of mercury, and that the complex contains hidden treasures and knowledge, much of which remains undisturbed. The secrecy surrounding the tomb of Qin Shi Huang has led to much speculation about the extent to which ancient Chinese emperors sought to conceal their power, wealth, and knowledge from future generations. The very act of burying such monumental objects in the earth is an unsettling one, as if to say that there are aspects of the past that we are not meant to uncover. Another fascinating aspect of underground discoveries is the way in which these spaces were sometimes used for ritual or spiritual purposes. The sacred caves of the ancient Mayans in Central America, for example, were believed to be portals to the underworld, and they were often used as sites for ceremonies intended to commune with the gods or seek spiritual guidance. These caves, hidden away in remote jungle regions, contain intricate carvings, paintings, and artifacts, many of which remain largely unexplored. In these dark spaces, the Mayans believed they could communicate with their ancestors, perform sacrifices, or seek counsel from supernatural forces. The eerie stillness of these places, untouched for centuries, allows the imagination to wander into the realm of the unknown. What rituals were performed in these caves? What knowledge was sought? And what was hidden from the outside world? The vast network of underground structures, tombs, and cities suggests that the ancient world had a fascination with the subterranean that transcends mere necessity or practicality. To dig into the earth was, for many cultures, to reach into the spiritual or cosmic realms. For some, the act of burial itself was a way to transcend death, to hide knowledge or power that was considered too dangerous for the living to possess. The mystery of the underground world is tied to a fundamental human desire to conceal, protect, or even forget. It is as if ancient peoples understood the earth to be both a protector and a keeper of secrets, with the capacity to preserve knowledge and power for future generations or to keep them forever hidden. What is perhaps most unsettling is the idea that, in these hidden chambers beneath the earth, there may still be things waiting to be discovered, objects, texts, or even bodies that could dramatically alter our understanding of history. Yet, like the catacombs, pyramids, and underground cities themselves, many of these secrets remain buried, waiting for the right moment or the right discovery to bring them back into the light. In a world where technology advances at an incredible pace, we often forget how much of the past is still locked away beneath our feet, concealed not by time alone, but by the very will of those who sought to hide it. And so, the earth continues to be a silent witness, holding its secrets close, leaving us to wonder what lies beneath and why some things are never meant to be found. In the realm of ancient mysteries, few topics inspire as much awe and curiosity as the technologies of long-forgotten civilizations. Across the ages, there have been remarkable achievements in engineering, metallurgy, medicine, and construction, many of which seem to surpass what we might expect from the societies that produced them. The paradox of ancient technology lies not in its existence, but in its apparent loss. How could civilizations so advanced in certain fields have seemingly disappeared without passing on their knowledge? What is more fascinating and eerie is that some of these technologies defy modern understanding, suggesting that there were once practices or principles in place that we, even with our vast technological resources, can only speculate about. One of the most striking examples of this forgotten technology is the precision with which ancient structures were built. Megalithic sites like Stonehenge in England, the pyramids of Egypt, and the megaliths at Baalbek in Lebanon display an uncanny level of sophistication in their construction. The blocks of stone used in these structures, some weighing many tons, were quarried, transported, and placed with a precision that modern engineering would find difficult to replicate, even with our advanced tools. The question that persists is how these ancient peoples, without the benefit of cranes, machinery, or even wheels in some cases, could have achieved such feats. At Baalbek, for instance, the Temple of Jupiter is supported by massive stone blocks, some of which are estimated to weigh over 800 tons. The largest block, known as the Stone of the Pregnant Woman, remains one of the most significant unsolved mysteries in the field of archaeology. How were these stones moved, and how were they precisely placed without modern technology? Was there an ancient form of transportation we have yet to uncover, or were there advanced techniques of leverage and force that have been lost to time? These questions only grow more perplexing as we consider the fact that many of these megalithic sites predate the rise of the civilizations we typically associate with monumental architecture. The possibility that these stones were not just moved but shaped with extreme accuracy and precision leads us to wonder whether ancient engineers had access to knowledge that was either forgotten or deliberately hidden. Similarly, the Great Pyramids of Giza are an enduring testament to ancient engineering. Built over 4,500 years ago, these structures have long captivated historians, scientists, and archaeologists. The precision with which the pyramids were constructed, each block meticulously cut and aligned with cardinal directions, is staggering. But what truly astounds researchers is the technology required to achieve such alignment without modern instruments. The Great Pyramid of Giza, for example, is aligned within 0.067 degrees of true north, a feat that would be impressive even with contemporary tools. How did the ancient Egyptians manage such precise measurements? And why does their engineering seem to have been lost to subsequent generations? Some theories suggest that the Egyptians possessed a form of advanced surveying technology that has since been forgotten, perhaps utilizing tools now lost to time. Others speculate that they might have had knowledge of astronomy and geometry far beyond what we typically associate with their era. Could they have had access to knowledge of the Earth's magnetic field, or perhaps methods of levitation and force that we have yet to discover? Beyond architecture, the ancient world also produced technologies in fields that still baffle modern science, particularly in the areas of metallurgy. Ancient civilizations like the Egyptians, Sumerians, and Indians are known to have developed and worked with metals in ways that modern metallurgists have struggled to replicate. One of the most famous examples is the Iron Pillar of Delhi, an ancient structure that has stood for over 1,600 years and is made of an iron alloy that resists corrosion despite exposure to the elements. How did the ancient Indians achieve such advanced metallurgical techniques? The metal in the iron pillar is composed of materials that suggest a high level of refinement, yet there is no clear record of how these materials were obtained or processed. In fact, many of the techniques used to create such alloys remain lost to modern science. The lost art of Damascus steel is another example of forgotten metallurgy. Originating in the Middle East, Damascus steel was used to forge legendary swords known for their strength and sharpness. The steel was imbued with a distinctive pattern, created by folding and forging the metal repeatedly. The process by which this steel was made, and the secret to its composition, remained a closely guarded secret for centuries. Today, despite efforts to replicate it, modern metallurgists are still unable to recreate Damascus steel with the same properties and patterning. The knowledge that allowed ancient blacksmiths to create such a superior material seems to have been lost, buried in the annals of history. In the realm of medicine, the ancient world also exhibited surprising feats of understanding. The practice of trepanation, the act of drilling or cutting holes into the skull, was performed by many ancient cultures, including the Incas, Egyptians, and even the ancient Greeks. While it may seem barbaric by today's standards, trepanation was often done with remarkable skill, and many patients survived the procedure. Some of the skulls recovered from ancient sites show signs of healing around the trepanation site, indicating that the individuals not only survived the operation, but were able to live for many years afterward. This suggests a level of medical knowledge and surgical expertise that was far ahead of its time. Could these ancient cultures have known more about the human body than we currently acknowledge? And why, despite centuries of medical progress, have we not been able to fully rediscover their methods? Another fascinating example of ancient medical knowledge is the use of herbal remedies. Ancient texts from cultures as diverse as the Egyptians, Greeks, and Chinese provide detailed accounts of the medicinal properties of plants and herbs. Some of these remedies have been confirmed by modern science, while others remain elusive. The Ebers Papyrus, an ancient Egyptian medical text, contains over 700 remedies, many of which were remarkably effective. Yet, despite the fact that many of these remedies were written down over 3,000 years ago, modern pharmacology is still working to understand the full potential of many of these ancient substances. What knowledge of plants, chemistry, and healing might have been lost with the decline of these cultures? As we reflect on these lost technologies, a central question emerges. What happened to this knowledge? How did civilizations so advanced in certain fields lose or abandon their most vital discoveries? Was it destroyed through warfare or natural disaster? Or was it deliberately hidden away, locked in secret scrolls, buried in forgotten tombs, or erased from the historical record? The mystery of ancient technology is more than just a historical puzzle. It speaks to the fragility of human knowledge, the cycles of rise and fall that govern civilizations, and the enigmatic nature of our collective past. Perhaps the most unsettling thought of all is that some of these technologies may still be buried, waiting for the right moment, the right discovery, to emerge once again and challenge our understanding of what ancient civilizations were truly capable of achieving. Throughout history, there have been objects whose origins and purposes are shrouded in mystery, yet they seem to hold an undeniable power, often a dark, unsettling power that captivates the imagination. These cursed relics, revered in some cultures and feared in others, seem to carry with them an inexplicable force that influences the lives of those who come into contact with them. From ancient artifacts to more modern discoveries, these objects have been linked to misfortune, death, and inexplicable events. What is it about these relics that continue to disturb and fascinate us? Is it their origins, the enigmatic cultures that produce them, or something darker, a lingering curse that latches onto those who dare to possess them? One of the most infamous cursed objects in history is the Hope Diamond, a massive, blue gemstone that has been associated with a series of unfortunate events since it was first discovered. Originating in India, the diamond was believed to have been stolen from a Hindu temple, and legends claim that it was cursed from the moment it was removed from its rightful place. Over the years, it passed through the hands of various owners, each of whom experienced disaster, death, or misfortune. King Louis XVI of France, who owned the diamond before his execution during the French Revolution, is one of the most notable victims of its curse. Following his death, many others associated with the diamond's ownership or possession met untimely ends, including jewelers, traders, and even royalty. Despite its beauty, the Hope Diamond remains a symbol of the power that certain objects seem to possess, an inescapable, almost malevolent energy that transcends rational explanation. Whether it is the stone's dark origins or the bizarre coincidences surrounding its ownership, the Hope Diamond has become a legend of misfortune, a relic imbued with a force that continues to captivate and unsettle all who encounter it. The infamous Curse of the Pharaohs offers another example of how relics tied to the ancient world seem to carry with them malevolent forces. The most notable case is the story of the tomb of Tutankhamun, which was discovered by the British archaeologist Howard Carter in 1922. The discovery of the tomb and its contents was a monumental event, but it quickly became overshadowed by a series of deaths and misfortunes that followed. Lord Carnarvon, who funded Carter's expedition, died shortly after the tomb was opened, and several others involved in the excavation also met untimely ends. The media at the time sensationalized the deaths, attributing them to a curse placed on the tomb by the ancient Egyptians. While many of these deaths were likely coincidental or explained by natural causes, the eerie pattern and the mystery surrounding the tomb made an enduring story, one that casts a shadow over the artifacts and treasures unearthed within it. The idea that the spirits of ancient Egypt might still be capable of exacting vengeance centuries after their death lingers in the background of these narratives, feeding into the widespread belief that certain relics or tombs are imbued with dangerous, supernatural forces. Equally unsettling are the cursed relics that seem to be more sinister in their design and purpose. The Nazi gold, lost treasures from the Third Reich, continues to haunt the modern world. In the chaos of the closing days of World War II, many pieces of art, treasure, and gold were hidden by Nazi officers, and the fate of these items has remained a mystery. Some believe that these relics are cursed due to their association with the atrocities committed by the Nazi regime. The stories of lost treasure are often intertwined with strange disappearances and unexplained deaths among those who search for them. One particularly haunting legend tells of a group of treasure hunters who sought to recover a cache of gold hidden in a remote location in Poland. Over the course of their search, many of the explorers vanished, and those who returned reported strange occurrences, voices, shadows, and an overwhelming sense of dread. The connection between these treasures and the dark history of the Nazis creates a compelling narrative, one in which the objects themselves seem to be imbued with the evil that once surrounded them. The lost Nazi treasure is more than just a collection of valuable artifacts. It is a symbol of an era filled with horror, and it carries with it a lingering sense of doom that resonates in the stories told by those who seek it. The concept of cursed relics is not confined to the ancient or the historical. Even in the modern era, there are objects that seem to exert a strange and unsettling power over those who come into contact with them. The Annabelle doll, for example, has become one of the most famous haunted objects of the 20th century. The doll, which was originally a gift to a young girl in the 1970s, is said to be possessed by an evil spirit. According to the Warrens, famous paranormal investigators, the doll caused a series of terrifying incidents in the home of its owners. From objects moving on their own to violent attacks on the family members, Annabelle seemed to be the catalyst for a series of disturbing events. Despite being locked away in a glass case at the Warrens Occult Museum, the doll's reputation continues to grow, with many believing that it carries an unfathomable evil. The fact that a seemingly innocent object like a doll could be imbued with such malevolent power taps into a primal fear. The fear of objects that transcend their physical form and hold something sinister within. Another chilling modern example is the Dybbuk box, a wine cabinet that allegedly contained a malicious spirit. The box, which was originally owned by a Holocaust survivor, is said to have caused harm to anyone who came into possession of it. According to the story, the box was sold to a collector, who soon experienced a string of disturbing occurrences, including physical attacks and a pervasive sense of dread. The Dybbuk box became famous when it was purchased by a man named Kevin Mannis, who attempted to sell it online, sparking a series of bizarre and unnerving events. The box is now believed to be one of the most cursed objects in the world, and its tale is often recounted in discussions of haunted objects and paranormal lore. The concept of cursed relics highlights a universal theme: the power that objects can hold over human lives. Whether these relics are imbued with malevolent energy through history, cultural beliefs, or pure superstition, they continue to captivate and disturb us. There is something deeply unsettling about the idea that inanimate objects, whether a diamond, a piece of ancient treasure, a doll, or a box, can hold such power, influencing events and fates with a force that defies rational understanding. These cursed relics, with their dark, enigmatic histories, serve as a reminder of how deeply we fear the unknown, the supernatural, and the possibility that some things in this world cannot be explained or controlled. In the end, it is not just the objects themselves that are cursed, but the eerie, lingering presence of the stories that surround them, stories that refuse to let go, continuing to cast their shadow across our understanding of the world. For centuries, myths have captivated human imagination, offering fantastical tales of gods, monsters, and events that explain the unexplainable. These stories, passed down through generations, often served as allegories, teaching moral lessons, explaining natural phenomena, or reinforcing cultural values. But what if some of these ancient myths weren't just fabrications or exaggerations? What if hidden within these stories there were elements of truth, echoes of real events, real places, and real phenomena? What if some ancient myths have a basis in fact, and, in some cases, have even come to life in ways that modern science and archaeology struggle to explain? The ancient Greek myth of the Trojan War is one of the most famous examples of a story that was once thought to be purely mythical, but is now widely believed to have been rooted in historical events. For centuries, the tale of the beautiful Helen, the valiant Achilles, and the deceitful Trojan horse was thought to be little more than a grand story, an epic poem with no real connection to historical reality. But in the 19th century, the German archaeologist Heinrich Schliemann set out to find the ancient city of Troy, as described by Homer in his epic, the Iliad. After excavating the site of Hizarlik in modern-day Turkey, Schliemann discovered the remains of a city that showed signs of destruction consistent with a violent war. The findings, including evidence of burned layers of buildings and artifacts suggesting sudden devastation, pointed to the possibility that Troy, or at least a city resembling it, had been destroyed in a conflict. While the details of the myth, such as the Trojan horse, may still be steeped in legend, the archaeological evidence suggests that the ancient Greeks and Trojans may have fought a war over control of the Aegean, just as Homer's tale suggests. This discovery opened the door to the idea that myths and legends, even the most fantastical ones, may hold kernels of truth. Similarly, the myth of Atlantis, described by the Greek philosopher Plato, has long intrigued historians, archaeologists, and mystics. Plato's account of an advanced civilization that existed beyond the Pillars of Hercules, before mysteriously sinking beneath the waves in a single day and night of calamity, has been the subject of debate for centuries. For years, scholars dismissed Atlantis as a fabrication, a story invented by Plato to illustrate his philosophical ideas about the ideal society. Yet, over the centuries, the idea of a lost, ancient civilization drowned by the sea has captured the imagination of countless explorers, archaeologists, and conspiracy theorists. In recent decades, some researchers have pointed to the Mediterranean as a possible location for Atlantis. The discovery of submerged ancient ruins in the waters around the Greek island of Santorini, for example, has led to speculation that Plato's Atlantis may have been inspired by the real volcanic eruption that destroyed the Minoan civilization around 1600 BC. While no definitive proof has been found to link these ruins directly to the myth of Atlantis, the discovery of ancient sunken cities and the persistent mystery surrounding them suggest that Atlantis may be a reflection of real, ancient events, the collapse of a once thriving culture that vanished beneath the waves. Another ancient myth that seems to have a basis in historical fact is the story of the lost city of the Incas, often referred to as Machu Picchu. For centuries, the existence of the city was known only through legend. The Spanish conquistadors, in their quest to conquer the Inca Empire, never found the legendary City of Gold described by the natives. The Inca had long believed that Machu Picchu was a sacred place, a high-altitude city nestled among the peaks of the Andes. It wasn't until the American explorer Hiram Bingham rediscovered the ruins in 1911 that the city of Machu Picchu was brought to the world's attention. Built in the 15th century, Machu Picchu was likely abandoned during the Spanish conquest, and its location remained hidden for hundreds of years. While the exact purpose of the city remains unclear, some believe it was a religious site, while others think it was a royal retreat. The discovery of Machu Picchu confirmed that ancient myths about the city had a basis in reality. The city's advanced construction techniques, the terraces, and the placement of its buildings suggest a high degree of engineering knowledge and a deep understanding of astronomy and geography. This discovery reinforced the idea that ancient myths often contain real historical clues, and that stories passed down through generations may have been inspired by actual places and events. The ancient myth of the Amazonian warrior women, the Amazons, is another fascinating example of a myth that may have been rooted in real history. The Greeks described the Amazons as a tribe of fierce female warriors who lived beyond the known world, often engaging in battle with Greek heroes like Heracles and Theseus. For centuries, historians dismissed the idea of a society of female warriors as pure myth, believing that the stories were exaggerated or entirely invented. However, recent archaeological findings in the steppes of Central Asia, where the Amazons were said to have lived, have uncovered the graves of women buried with weapons, suggesting that these women were indeed warriors. In the Pazyryk burial mounds in Siberia, researchers have found evidence of women who were buried with the same weapons as their male counterparts: scythes, swords, and knives. These findings suggest that there may have been cultures where women participated in battle, challenging the conventional notion of gender roles in ancient societies. While the specific connection to the Amazons remains speculative, the discovery of these warrior women suggests that the myths of the Amazons may have been based on real women who fought in battles and led warrior societies. The existence of the legendary creatures of myth, such as dragons, griffins, and unicorns, also raises questions about the line between myth and reality. While these creatures were once thought to be purely fantastical, there have been instances where real animals have been misidentified or exaggerated into mythical beings. The unicorn, for example, was long considered a purely mythical creature, yet accounts from ancient civilizations describe a horse-like animal with a single horn. It wasn't until the 16th century that European explorers encountered the Indian rhinoceros, a creature with a single horn, leading some to speculate that the unicorn of myth may have been based on real creatures that were later embellished through storytelling. Similarly, the dragon, a creature of terror and majesty in many cultures, may have been inspired by the discovery of dinosaur fossils or large reptilian creatures that roamed the earth long before humans. The more we learn about ancient myths, the more we begin to recognize that many of these stories may not be entirely fictional. Whether based on real events, misunderstood creatures, or cultures that have left behind few traces, these myths hold clues to the past, an invitation to explore the mysteries that have captivated us for millennia. The truth behind these ancient myths may not always be as fantastical as the stories themselves, but the fact that they persist, woven into the fabric of human culture, speaks to the enduring nature of our collective imagination and our quest to understand the world around us. Perhaps, in the end, the line between myth and history is not so clear-cut, and the stories we once thought were purely mythological may, in fact, contain echoes of the real, unexplained events of the past.